The story begins by introducing a new student named Lynn, who has just transferred from her old school because her father insisted she attend this new school. At that time, her father also showed off Lynn's achievements, both academically and non-academically. The principal, who saw this, responded with great pride. However, when Lynn found out that her father had to pay a large amount of money, she felt a deep sense of guilt and tried to refuse, insisting on staying at her old school to ease her father's burden. Lynn did this to reduce the expenses of her father, who only worked as a teacher. But the principal decided to waive all of Lynn's school fees, and she didn't need to pay to attend the school. The principal even guaranteed that Lynn would receive free lunches. Upon hearing this, Lynn eventually enrolled in the prestigious school in Thailand, feeling a mix of excitement and anxiety. Despite the pressure, Lynn hoped she could live up to the expectations placed on her. Shortly afterward, when Lynn was about to take a photo, she met a woman named Grace, and their friendship began. Not long after, Grace mentioned that she needed high grades to join the drama club, so Grace asked Lynn to help her study. Hearing her friend's plea, Lynn couldn't refuse and decided to help Grace with the assignments their teacher had given them. The next day, when the exam began, Lynn was shocked to find that the exam questions were identical to the practice questions given by their teacher. However, Grace still couldn't answer them properly, so Lynn had to help her. After finishing her own test, Lynn began helping Grace. She looked for a way to avoid being noticed by their teacher, eventually writing all the answers on an eraser before passing it to Grace using her shoe. At that moment, Grace's shoe slipped, but fortunately, Lynn managed to retrieve it and quickly submitted her test paper. The next day, their test results were distributed, and Grace was overjoyed because she scored 3.87. Because of this, Grace invited Lynn to meet her boyfriend, Pat, the son of a hotel owner. While they were relaxing, Pat smiled at Lynn and warmly thanked her for helping Grace, saying that his girlfriend had been struggling and Lynn had made a big difference for her. He then offered Lynn a job, asking her to provide answers just like she had done for Grace, with a payment of 3,000 baht per session. On top of that, Pat planned to bring in 4 of his friends. Hearing the large sum of money, Lynn immediately agreed. Some time later, Lynn was at home when she accidentally found a receipt showing that the school had lied, and her father still had to pay 200,000 baht in tuition. Seeing this, Lynn burst into tears before recalling Pat's job offer, thinking it could help her father. The next day, Lynn gathered all her friends in a secluded spot, her heart pounding as she explained the plan. She demonstrated each finger movement that symbolized A, B, C, and D, repeating the gestures multiple times to ensure everyone understood. As a result, during the exam, Lynn began signaling the answers to her friends through her finger movements. In the end, all of them passed with scores above 80, and Lynn was paid handsomely for her efforts. Time passed quickly, and Lynn advanced to the 12th grade. Additionally, their class welcomed a new student named Bank, who was just as smart as Lynn. In fact, Bank was immediately paired with Lynn as her partner in a school quiz, and together they easily won the competition. Because of this, the principal called both of them to the office. During the meeting, the principal explained that the Singapore government was offering scholarships to outstanding students to study there. However, the quota was limited to only 1 student. Therefore, the principal wanted both of them to compete fairly for the scholarship. Sometime later, Bank was approached by a classmate named Thong, who was one of Lynn's clients and had paid her for help. Thong felt that what Lynn provided was too difficult to understand, so he asked Bank for assistance. However, Bank, who disliked cheating, refused to help him. Not long after, the exam began and all the students, including Bank, were focused on answering the questions. The tension was palpable as the students concentrated, their pens moving quickly across the pages and the clock ticking ominously in the background. When Bank was working on the final question, he asked his teacher for clarification on how to solve it. However, the teacher instructed him to answer based on the exam code that was given. Hearing this, Lynn was shocked to learn that there were 2 types of exam papers, Type 1 and Type 2. Meanwhile, Bank, who had finished the exam early, noticed that Thong was constantly looking at Lynn's answer sheet. As Bank was about to submit his paper, his answer sheet fell in front of Lynn, and he immediately informed her that Thong was cheating off her answers. When Bank submitted his exam paper, He also reported to the teacher that Thong was cheating. However, when the teacher looked in Thong's direction, everything seemed fine. Soon after, time was running out, so Lynn quickly finished her exam before asking Thong to switch his paper. Because of this, Lynn was forced to complete both types of exams and share the answers with her friends. Fortunately, Lynn managed to escape the situation by quickly copying the answers onto Thong's paper without drawing attention, and all her clients were satisfied. However, that satisfaction faded when Bank brought the issue to the principal, leading to Lynn and Thong being summoned to answer for their actions. Due to Lynn's mistake, the school called her parents and decided to award the scholarship to Bank. Upon hearing this, Lynn's father was furious and told his daughter to return the money to her friends. Some time later, as Lynn prepared to enter university, she no longer cared about the scholarship and went to meet Grace. At that time, Grace shared that she and Pat were having problems. When Grace had dinner with Pat's family, his parents suggested that she attend university in Boston with Pat. Not only that, Pat's parents also thanked Grace for helping their son with his studies. Unexpectedly, Pat's parents also offered to cover all the administrative costs Grace would face in Boston. Grace then explained that STAC was an international exam required for university admission in Boston. Therefore, Grace asked Lynn for help in preparing for the exam. The next day, Lynn met Pat and Grace again, where they explained how she could help them both. It turned out that Lynn would be going to Boston as well, and she needed the money to cover her travel expenses. Therefore, she asked Pat to find clients who could pay her 600,000 baht to take the exam. Additionally, Lynn needed a partner to assist her during this task. Meanwhile, Bank was returning home from school when, just as he was about to open his gate, he was suddenly attacked by two men. When he regained consciousness, Bank found himself lying in a pile of garbage. Due to this incident, Bank was unable to take the scholarship exam he had been preparing for tirelessly, which was crucial for his future education and his chance to secure a better life. At the same time, Pat and Grace had gathered 30 clients to take the STIC exam. Pat then demonstrated how Lynn would provide the exam answers, detailing how she would memorize the questions and use hidden signals to convey the correct choices. He showed them the hand signals and timing they had practiced, which greatly impressed the clients. Sometime later, Bank started to recover. Shortly after, Lynn approached him to express her condolences for what had happened to Bank. She then invited him to join her in helping the clients. Initially, Bank refused because he didn't approve of cheating, but Lynn kept persuading him to become her partner. In the end, Lynn gave Bank an address in case he changed his mind. Not long after, Bank followed the address and met Lynn, having decided to help her. Bank figured that with that much money, he could grow his business, which he had started to support his family. Soon after, the simulation began, with both Lynn and Bank registered to take the STIC exam. However, they also took the time to practice how to avoid getting caught. During a gathering, Lynn asked what would happen if Bank got caught. Pat responded that he didn't care because Bank wasn't his friend. Pat even called Bank a loser for having been beaten up and thrown into a pile of garbage. Hearing this, Bank became furious and attacked Pat, as he had never told anyone about being dumped in the garbage. It was then revealed that Pat was behind the attack on Bank, which made Lynn furious. She threatened to cancel their entire plan unless Pat could convince Bank to stay. Feeling guilty, Pat tried to apologize, but Bank, already too angry, decided to leave. On his way out, Bank saw a billboard advertising laundry detergent, which reminded him of his mother, who worked tirelessly washing clothes to support the family and often talked about the importance of hard work and perseverance. This led Bank to reconsider and return to the original plan. After resolving everything, Lynn and Bank headed to the airport for their flight to Sydney, where Bank remarked that he had never traveled abroad before. The next day, the exam began. Before the test, Bank and Lynn went to the restroom to hide the phones they would use to send the answers. After making sure everything was set, they entered the exam room and began the test. During the exam, Lynn and Bank quickly completed their questions. After the first part of the exam, they returned to the restroom to retrieve their phones. Both of them quickly typed out the answers they remembered and sent them to a group chat that included Lynn, Grace, Pat, and Bank. However, an unexpected problem occurred when accidentally Bank deleted all his answers just as he was about to send them. As a result, Grace and Pat, who had been waiting for a long time, became frustrated because Bank had not yet sent the answers. Unexpectedly, Bank sent a message stating that he wanted an additional 1 million baht in exchange for the answers. After reading the message, Pat became furious, his face turning red as he unable to believe that Bank would do such a thing. However, with time running out, Grace tried to negotiate with Bank, explaining that they didn't have enough money to pay immediately. Grace promised to send him the 1 million baht after the exam was over. Surprisingly, Bank agreed to this condition and sent his answers right away. After the exam was finished, Grace promptly transferred the requested money, and she and Pat printed out the answers. Meanwhile, Lynn and Bank returned to the exam room after the break. They appeared to finish the test quickly and easily. Once again, Lynn and Bank recalled the answers and headed back to the restroom to send them to the group chat. However, this time, the situation took a turn. While Bank was trying to recall his answers, a security guard suddenly knocked on the restroom door. Initially, Bank ignored it, but panic set in when the guard mentioned hearing complaints that Bank had been in the restroom for too long. At the same time, Lynn, who had already sent her answers, grew worried because Bank still hadn't sent his. In this tense situation, Bank became increasingly anxious as the guard kept urging him to come out. In his panic, he accidentally broke the toilet lid, which only added to his stress. Desperate to avoid being caught, Bank tried to destroy his phone, but the guard managed to break down the restroom door and caught him before he could finish. On the other side, Lynn exited the restroom and saw Bank being interrogated after being caught. Realizing the situation, Lynn quickly changed the location of her hidden phone from under the toilet lid to beneath the cover of the dispenser. Feeling it was now secure, Lynn focused on completing the exam on her own, carefully memorizing each answer. After successfully finishing the exam, Lynn put her pencil in her mouth, forcing herself to vomit. Knowing that creating a medical emergency was the only way she could leave the exam room without raising too much suspicion. As a result, she immediately retrieved the phone she had hidden and attempted to escape. Meanwhile, the guard, who had already caught Bank, grew suspicious of Lynn's behavior. He started to chase her. Realizing she was being followed, Lynn panicked and began running to avoid the guard. While fleeing, she quickly wrote down the answers and sent them. After Lynn successfully sent her answers, Grace and Pat encountered a problem when Lynn's father came to see them, asking about his daughter's whereabouts. He had grown suspicious after not hearing from Lynn for hours and had tracked down Grace and Pat by asking around, determined to find out what was happening. At that moment, Lynn's father insisted they tell the truth, warning them that if they lied, he would take the matter to the school. With no other choice, Grace hesitated, her heart pounding as she considered the consequences of lying. She decided to mislead Lynn's father by saying that Lynn was with her boyfriend, hoping he would believe her and leave without further questions. Unexpectedly, Lynn's father seemed to believe them and immediately left. After he was gone, Grace and Pat quickly resumed their work. Meanwhile, Lynn was approached by the security guard, and she forced herself to vomit again to convince him that she was really sick. However, the guard didn't care and insisted that Lynn return to the exam room. Upon returning, Lynn saw Bank being interrogated. They were asking him pointed questions about how he had accessed the exam answers and who else was involved. Bank, visibly shaken, stammered as he tried to defend himself, but his voice cracked under pressure. Lynn overheard that he would likely be banned from taking the STIC exam for life. Sometime later, Lynn returned to Thailand, where Grace and Pat were waiting for her, planning to invite her to a celebration for their success. However, Lynn was not in the mood and quickly declined. Not only that, she scolded both of them because Bank had been caught. Lynn told them that she no longer wanted to be involved in such work. Shortly after, while Lynn was waiting to be picked up at the airport, it turned out her father was already there to pick her up. Upon seeing her father's expression, Lynn immediately burst into tears, and her father asked her to invite Bank to join them for dinner. After going through the stress of almost getting caught, seeing Bank being interrogated, and dealing with her father's disappointment, Lynn decided to change her life. She applied to become a student in the field of education, as she wanted to be a teacher like her father. At the same time, Grace, Pat, and a few others who had successfully completed the exam were seen enjoying a party. Sometime later, Lynn visited Bank at his laundry shop, where she noticed that he had purchased several new washing machines. As they talked, Bank mentioned that he would no longer be involved in any dirty business, and even invited Lynn to be his partner. Unexpectedly, he threatened that if Lynn refused, he would report her to the STIC authorities. Apparently, Banks was frustrated with his own situation, combined with a desire to regain some control and leverage over Lynn, drove him to make the threat. Despite the threat, Lynn didn't care and immediately left Banks' house. Moral lesson from the story: if you're going to cheat, at least be smart enough not to get caught. But if you do, just blame someone else and hope for the best. Remember, teamwork makes the dream work. Until someone rats you out.